Good afternoon. I will be presenting with Dr. Govinda on motivational interviewing.
Great. Dr. Govinda, can you just make it a slide presentation? Great. Proceed. Is it not working? If it isn't, then don't worry. Yeah, just click on that. That's fine. Proceed, Gisela.
Hello, Dr. Musa, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sure everyone can hear you, so proceed.
Okay. We're firstly going to explain what motivational interviewing is. So it's basically a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. So it is designed to strengthen personal motivation personal motivation and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. So basically, it's an effective way of talking with an individual to assess their readiness of change. So initially, motivational interviewing was used with patients that had issues with substance abuse, but it has been found to be very useful in other aspects as well, such as patients with excessive alcohol use, patients who practice a lot of unsafe sexual intercourses, patients also with chronic diseases who are not compliant to medication. It can be used for an unhealthy lifestyle or patients that do not partake in physical activity and should be exercising to help with their chronic illnesses. So there are certain principles to keep in mind when practicing motivational interviewing. One of them is discrepancy, of which it's the inconsistency between the client's goals and their behavior. So we need to keep that in mind when we are talking to the patient. Empathy as well, which can be given or offered to the patient through a reflective listening. We should also avoid arguments and direct confrontation. Also, it is advised to roll with resistance rather than opposing it, which could make a patient very resistant if we fight with them. And self-efficiency optimism should be supported. So there are 6 stages with motivational interviewing. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. The first stage, which is pre-contemplation, is the point when a patient has no intention to change their behavior. So usually these patients are not aware of their behavior, and if they do seek treatment, is usually because somebody hinted it to them, or they're doing it for somebody else, or was told to seek treatments. These patients are also very prone to relapses. The next stage, the second stage, is contemplation, where the patient is now aware that they have a problem and they are now thinking about the problem. So it is in their conscious. Patients are still weighing the pros and cons of changing their behavior, and the patients who do decide to change their behavior have formed variable expectations about their ability to change and the rewards that will come from their changes. The next step is preparation. Patients intend to change their behavior, however, they might not have started the process to do so. So there are various reasons why this could be so, why they haven't changed their behavior. So it could be from previous attempts in their past where they were not successful, or there are certain delays in getting through a certain event or stressful period. So this image, the next image, can be used to assess the patient's readiness to change. So we have on the y-axis the confidence, And in the x-axis, we have the importance. So the most ideal situation will be a patient who is on C. So basically, this image just shows that we can have a patient on A where they realize the importance of change. However, they are not yet confident enough to elicit the change. We could also have a patient on B where they do not realize the importance of change, but they do have the confidence to change. So in an ideal world, we'd expect a patient to be on the C scenario, where they understand both the importance of change and they are confident enough to change. So I think the next person will be presenting.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Tinashe.
Okay. So it's Dr. Manche. I'll be taking over from where she left. The other stage, it's the action, where now the patient is actively taking steps to change, but has not yet reached a stable stage. So in this case, a patient is modifying their behavior so they can overcome the problem that they're having. So the stage requires the commitment of time and energy to make real change. And it also includes stopping the behavior and modifying one's lifestyle and the environment as well. The other stage is a maintenance stage. So the patient will have achieved the initial goal and is now working towards maintaining the gains. So the patients work to prevent relapse, to consolidate the gains and also the gains they have made. So now the patient is able to sustain the behavior, which should be more than 6 months. And the other stage is a relapse. So now this is the rule rather than the expectation with addictive behaviors. So now the patient can go through the cycle of several times until they successfully eliminate that certain behavior. Okay, my other colleague will be continuing from here. Thank you.
So this is the last part of the presentation, which is the 5 A's. It's the brief stepwise approach that that provides structured guidance to primary care providers on how to counsel patients with risky lifestyle behaviors. So the first one is ask, followed by alert, assess, assist, and arrange. So number 1, ask. We need to identify if a patient is at risk from an unhealthy behavior. We then ask what they already know or think about the risks that are associated with the said behavior, and we ask for their permission to provide further information and benefits about a behavior change. For example, we could ask them, do they smoke? And a follow-up question to this would be, would they be okay if we spent a few minutes talking about their smoking habit? Number 2, alert. This is where we share additional information about health risks and or benefits of change. If a health risk problem is existent, we link it with a risk behavior. For example, quitting smoking can prevent things like COPD and in the future, lung cancer. We also ask the patient how they feel about the information provided, and we try to elicit a personal reaction to the information that we have given them. Number 3, assess. We ask the patient about the possibility of making a change at this point in time, and we assess how important change is to them and how confident they feel about the change. We affirm any talk about change, and we offer support and assistance. Number 4, assist. We decide if the patient is ready to change or not. So if they are ready to change, we discuss, if they're not ready to change, sorry, we discuss the patient's ambivalence, we ask them about their concerns, and we invite the patient to identify pros and cons of the change. And if they are ready, we try to provide practical assistance, assisting the patient to formulate realistic change goals and explore how to practically achieve them in daily lifestyle. And 5, arrange. We arrange any follow-up visits, and we also document any decisions or goals that the patient has made based on the risks that we have identified. This is just an example of motivational interviewing. It's a short video.
Tanishka, when you're sharing, sorry, if you can stop the video. Just go to the share button. When you click on share, you'll see that it allows you to share sound at the bottom. Or if you click, yeah, I think that's where you're gonna, because your sound's not gonna come through. So just click on the share button. Your screen will pop up. Right at the bottom, you'll see a share sound. No, not on the slide, not on the slide. You know, in the Zoom, there's a share screen. Click on that once more. You don't need to close this, just click on the share screen. The green button says share screen. And you should on your screen see the full sharing opportunity. But on that screen, you should see the opportunity to share sound at the bottom. Tanishka, you want to unmute yourself so that I can understand what you're trying to do?
I'm not seeing it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Do you see on Zoom, you've got a share screen in front of you? I don't want you to click on the slide. I want you to click on the Zoom screen. The Zoom screen has a share screen at the bottom. Okay, it's how you decided to share the screen. If you feel confused, stop sharing. All right, now share screen again. And as you are trying to share the screen, you should see something on the share screen that you have to optimize sound or something like that, where you have to put a tick to share sound. Right, do that and now share. Good. All right, now you can go for it. All right, perhaps you want to just scroll it back to the beginning. Yeah, okay, should be fine. Good to go.
Hi, David. I'm Courtney. What brings you in to see me today?
Working fine.
I have high blood pressure.
Okay, so what specific concerns do you have about your high blood pressure?
Really, I've got a family history of high blood pressure. My grandmother passed away from heart disease. My grandfather also had heart disease, and my uncle passed away at a fairly young age from heart disease.
Okay, so I understand that you feel that you are susceptible to heart problems because of your blood pressure and your family history?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, what things do you think you can do to lower your risks of heart-related issues?
I think primarily, more exercise, cleaning up my diet, and removing some stress.
Okay, that's a really great idea, actually. Or starting a meal plan or a exercise plan even together would be a great place to start. How confident, from a scale of 1 to 10, would you be to be able to stay on a plan for about 4 weeks?
4 weeks, I think probably about a 7.
7's a good number, but why did you choose a 7, not a 4 or a 5?
I think I chose a 7 because I'm a very motivated person. I've done some diets in the past, got some experience. So I think that's primarily why I chose 7.
Okay, so it sounds like you feel that you feel strongly that you would be able to do a plan, and that you needed to make a change to better your health, basically. It sounds like you realize that a meal plan and an exercise plan could help with your heart and your overall health in general. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, you still chose a 7, not a 10. So it tells me that you have some obstacles that there may be. What would those be?
Yeah, I think like anybody, we face obstacles. Some of the primary ones for me is I've got 3 kids, and so they take a lot of time. So trying to find the time to exercise, get that in, and then also do a diet is hard. And then, I work a lot, so trying to get trying to get away and remove that stress from work is hard to do.
Okay, well, it sounds like starting the plans might be a challenge for you, but knowing the obstacles and knowing what you can do with your making a plan for your diet and a plan for your meals with your family, how confident do you think you'd be now that you know those? What would you need to do to get to a 9 or a 10?
I think really I'd probably need to, planning I think is a big part of it. Making sure that I took the time, planned my exercise, planned it around the routines my family does. Planning my diet plan, I think making sure that I go shopping and have the right foods in the house. Plan ahead during the day for meals because, if not, you get stuck out there and end up going to fast food. And then also, really trying to create some separate time to relieve stress from work and different things.
Okay, well, and the exercise that you'll be doing can help you with the stress level also. So those are great ideas. So I think that's an excellent start. I appreciate you, David, for coming in to see me today. I will give you some meal plan and exercise plan ideas that you can take home and try out and see what you think of them. And I'll see you back in about 4 weeks to see how you're doing.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Great, Tanishka and team. Any questions from anybody, comments? Dr. Aki, Dr. Pitkova, if you want to add anything.
Yes, Prof.
Go ahead.
Yes, I can. Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is one of the presentations that would trigger people to really think about the practicalities of what we come across in primary health care. However, I just have one comment. Practically, in reality, this presentation would pose a lot of questions for the presenters to think about. What I see here is kind of like a didactic presentation. It's a theoretical presentation, but I would like a comment from the presenters. What would you consider some of the factors that you would look at in terms of, having a successful motivational, interview or stroke counseling, practically in your setup? Because this is more of a theoretical presentation, which is used to kind of illustrate the steps of motivational interviewing and counseling. But practically speaking, when you have a patient in front of you, what are some of the factors that you would be thinking about relating to the issues that the patient brings in front of you? Because you are not going to follow these particular steps, because patients come with several unique issues and problems. So I would like you to just recap and tell us what principles are you looking at in terms of having a successful motivational interviewing.
It's Manka here. So I think, first of all, especially in our setting, you would like to build a relationship with your patient and kind of make them feel welcome in your consultation room. Again, you will also have to look into the factors that are contributing towards the problem that the patient brings in, especially like family matters, and see how the patient can relate to, or how is the patient relating to family members and the environment they're living in as well. So I think if we start there, then it is kind of practical for the patient to open up and to help also in terms of solving the problem that they come in with. Thanks.
Any other responses and any other comments?
Can I say something, Prof?
Go ahead, Dr.
Yes.
Pitkova.
I want to say that in such a process of motivational interview, the doctor is the one who has to lead the patient and not to impose anything in his beliefs, and to structure the questions in the way that the patient cannot have any concerns or any doubts why they're doing this motivational interview. And because patients in these days are very much informed about everything, they have access to the internet, they can go and they can search whatever. So they can come and they can even provoke you with questions which you have to be ready to answer. So you have to be the leader of that motivational interview, not the patient. You need to guide the patient how the whole process needs to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Perhaps I could just add a few comments. I don't know if there are any responses, but perhaps I can just add a comment before we get a response. I think last week I talked about the consultation approach, and I hope people remember the fact that one can keep things relatively simple. I think you've talked, Moketi, about building a relationship, building rapport with the patient. In the juggler's model, I talked about the fact that time is really important. We all know that that's a challenge. I think that's what Dr. Aki was talking about, practicalities. We don't have the time. But at the end of the day, we are sitting and thinking clinically, and we are reasoning. And already we're beginning to shift our reasoning from the clerking approach that we did in hospital to primary care, where we use a educated guessing, hypothetical deductive approach. So that is, again, a much more efficient way to go about dealing with patients clinically. And then I talked about facilitation, which is active listening, and collaboration. And I don't know whether you realize, but a lot of the elements of motivational interviewing, and particularly that relationship building, is about active listening and collaborating with the patient. Remember, collaboration is about I squared. What are people's ideas? What are their concerns? What do they expect? Are we empathizing with them? Are we complimenting them? And did you see in that particular interview quite a bit of that coming through, where there was empathy and compliments that came through, and she was exploring the ideas? So this is about that relationship that you talked about, Moketi. But in particular, in motivational interviewing, I think you've raised it. The 5 A's is a very useful way to think it through, and it doesn't need to take time. The way I think about motivational interviewing in a very basic way is, yes, we build that relationship, which is the jugglers. But the second thing, that 2 other things are really important in that process. One is that you don't confront the patient. You don't challenge the patient, because the one thing a patient doesn't want is for them to be judged. So avoid judgmental terms, confronting the patient in a way that's judgmental. Keep your judgment back and work with the patient. And the way to work with the patient is to explore their ideas and concerns, etc. So the asking is to put it on the table. And then you want to inquire about, what do they think about what's going on, and make a judgment as to where they are in assessing, where they are in terms of their relationship to that problem, which is short. Where are they in relation to how important is this, or is it a problem that they recognize? And that's really to see. And most patients are sitting, the difficult patient is sitting in a pre-contemplative space where they don't think there's a problem. And that's most where people sit. And you need to see if through their ideas, does it show the importance with which they treat this problem? Yes, when we've got that clear as a problem, then the next step is to decide how much confidence the person has. And the tools that we used in the interview are kind of useful. How confident do you feel in a scale of 10? But the biggest problem is the importance with which they treat this. Do they recognize the problem? And like Dr. Petkova has said, you want to have this conversation, but you have to quickly decide where they are in terms of their levels of change, as you've put out. And when they, as they might be in the contemplative, pre-contemplative space, and contemplative is that they recognize that, yes, it's a problem. In other words, the importance has gone up. But in pre-contemplative, when you struggle, you need to actually say something. And that's the only thing that you should be saying. Otherwise, most of your conversation is still exploring what they feel and think about the behavior choice that they're making. And in that, what you have to do is you have to basically link. Sometimes patients have an ambivalence. In other words, they think that they sort of say one thing, but they say another thing, and they're contradictory. And you need to not catch them at the contradiction, but you have to ask, I'm not sure I understand. When you say, I'm worried about, my father was sick and he died early, but, I don't think that smoking is much of an issue. And you have to say, how do you reconcile the two? And sometimes in that conversation, you can correct the information that they have, saying, no, smoking does have a link to heart disease. So that's making, what we call personalizing the problem, making them realize that what they have as a clinical issue is of importance or to their outlook in life and the way their fears float around. That, that's not an unimportant problem. That's about it. When you find yourself unable to you see the person's resisting change, don't sit and go on and on and on. This patient's not in a position to be clear. And if you're not getting there within literally a minute or two, don't need to go into more. The patient's not needing any more of the sort of assistance and follow-up. All you need to do is, as has been said, figure out if they're not willing to change, give them information and say, come back and we'll talk more about it. Give them the other tools, if you can, but rather get them information and don't sit and give them long lectures. So if I see a patient, a doctor, a young doctor, giving patients instructions, telling them at length about smoking without having established where they are, they're wasting their time. And you shouldn't be wasting your time. Your time is valuable. So find an opportunity to manage that and save time. Rather give them information, come back another month, see where they are, have brief conversation. So this is really very brief. And motivational interviewing is not an interview to motivate. It's actually just quickly assessing their levels of change. Even when you are in a position where they are ready for change, a lot of that is about directing them, saying, well, let's give you information, or let's get you to link up with the club, or a system, or let's get you to get some more support, etc. But it should be brief. So I think that one needs to think of motivational interviewing as part of your normal consultation, not a separate long exercise. I hope that helps you to understand what Dr. Aki and Dr. Petkova raised. And thanks, that was a great presentation. Let's move on to the next. Ultimately, this happens with consultations. And as you're going along, I think we're going to start doing virtual consultations to get you all to understand and appreciate some of these questions. And where we'll interview and do the consultation. And you can see the way we do it and how you can use it. All right, we'll do that perhaps next week or try and find a time. Let's go to the next group. Any questions, any comments before we move on?